I'm back to read to you Polaris to find out what happens when they go below deck on Chapter 16, The Face of Horror. Emma had gladly handed the gun back to Owen at the end of her watch, but now she eyed it jealously. As the group made its way back toward the hatch once again, she watched the pistol bobbing loosely in Owen's right hand. She remembered that the weight, cold and reassuring. She looked down at the large carving knife in her hand. It was neither quite as heavy as the pistol, or nearly as comforting. What do I think we're fighting here? She thought. A cooked turkey? Owen stuck the pistol in his belt and knelt down to clear off the hatch cover. Anyone else get the stinking feeling we've been here before? Said Thatcher. When no one answered, he went on. What makes us think this time will be any different? It's light now, said Owen. Remember? He grunted as he shoved the heavy coil of the rope aside and then added, We will be able to see more clearly. Emma looked at him so literal. Thatcher looked at him too. Do you imagine that an improvement? I would rather go to my grave getting a closer look than get a closer look at that thing, said Aaron. Owen, already removing the wooden battens, looked up. Be careful what you wish for, he said. Emma smiled. Not so literal after all. She knelt down to help him remove the hatch. A few moments later, they stood peering into the opening. Emma looked down at the square of morning sunlight at the bottom. Her sister's bloody footprints were still visible on the rungs of the ladder. She glanced back at Maria, who was standing at the helm. The seas were too high and to tie the wheel today, and Maria's injured foot made her the obvious choice to take it. Emma looked at the scrap of cloth wrapped around her sister's foot, dark red, engaging toward brown. At least the bleeding had stopped. Emma felt a sudden tenderness for her sister, who had come so far and with her and been through so much. Maria had been right about their Spanish style. The others didn't really seem to care much that they were girls. There had been some slights, certainly, and it was awkward when Emma looked up and caught Owen looking back. But overall, it was clear. They had bigger things to think about these days. Maria took a hand from the wheel and gave her sister a small wave. Cuidado, she mouthed. Be careful. Emma nodded and turned back to the hatch. She was glad at least one of them was safe. Who goes first? Said Hatcher. He turned to Henry. You have the lantern. Plenty of sunlight at the bottom, Henry protested. I'll go, said Owen. I have the gun. No one argued. Owen took a deep breath, swung around, and headed straight down the ladder. Emma had expected a little more time. Wait, she mumbled, but he would not. If I wait, I won't do it, he said, disappearing below deck. The others fell in line behind him. First Henry with a lantern, then Thatcher with a wicked-looking gaff hook, then Emma with her knife, and Aaron directly after her with a blade of his own. There was no Bible among them this time. Whatever they'd seen and heard the last time, it was a living thing. Perhaps a bear, Aaron had said the night before. A bear between decks, Owen had scoffed. Actually, bears are good swimmers, Henry added. Not helpful, thought Emma, but she didn't believe for a second that it was a bear. She could still hear its horrible breathy rasp. There was something obscene about it, unholy. Bears, at least, have the decency to roar, she thought. She gripped her knife tight and felt the glaze of sweat between her palm and its wood handle. She reached the bottom and joined the others, huddled together in a patch of sunlight, standing in perhaps a quarter of an inch of seawater. She stepped aside to make room for Aaron. They all stood close together, their various weapons trembling hands posing almost as much danger to each other as anything that awaiting them. Maybe we should make noise, said Emma. It is what you do if you think there are bears in the woods. You make noise to scare them off. The look she got from the others told her that none of them truly believed that it was a bear. I know it's not a bear, she clarified, but maybe we should treat it like one. Monsters might be scared too. Owen looked down the hallway. Emma followed his gaze. The light from the gratings filled down in hazy beams. The gaps in between were dim but not dark. "We are not going to sneak up on it now anyway," he said. "All animals can be startled," said Henry, "even lions of Africa." Aaron looked at him. "What's a lion?" "It's like a bear and a cat in one." "I hope it ain't one of those," Aaron said seriously. "Lord," said Thatcher, "is there nothing you aren't afraid of?" Owen ignored his chatter. Emma couldn't see that what he was thinking. The pistol was pointed down the passageway, but his eyes were far off. Suddenly, he blinked and looked up. "Yes," he said loudly. "We will move fast, grab food and water. We will raise the dickens the whole way, shouting and stomping. We will scare this thing off. Be a bear or a man." He turned to Henry. "Lion?" said Henry. "Aye," said Owen. "Be that either." "And what if we don't scare it off?" said Aaron. "Then we shall shoot it and stab it until it wishes we had." "The devil doesn't scare so easily," muttered Thatcher, and Emma could see that he was still wearing Owen's silver cross. "Nor does he bleed." She would not let this gloomy boy darken their interrupted mood. "Hurrah!" she said, arousing vote for her own ploy. "Hurrah for food and water," said Aaron. "I'll cheer to that," said Henry. They looked at Thatcher, who raised his gab, took a weak solidarity. "Let's go," boomed Owen, leading the charge, and with that they stormed between the deck. Weapons and voices raised, and they bashed and stomped their way down the passage to the galley. Emma's heart pounded with heavy, fast thumps that they could feel in her head, but nothing rose to stop them. Emma smiled as they reached the galley, and Owen swung open the door with the barrel of his pistol, but a new problem arose immediately. He couldn't haul the food and hold the weapon at the same time. "Grab what you can," said Owen, pulling the hammer back of the pistol. "I will cover you." Emma and Thatcher squatted down to lift a barrel of water, their weapons piled on top. Emma was sure the gaff took would cost her an eye before she saw the sun again. Aaron and Henry wrestled with a barrel of salted meat. "No, not more pork," said Thatcher. "I'm sick of pork. Get that one, the beef." Aaron and Henry pivoted to the next barrel. "I can balance either the lantern on top of it or the biscuit," said Henry. "Give me the lamp," said Owen, reaching over to his free hand, and the gun still trained on the open door. "Take the sea bread." Come on," said Emma, as Henry stacked 2 large tins of biscuits on top of the barrel. She knelt down to lift it all. "Heave, you dog," she said Owen, and they did. Owen went for the door first, his pistol held at arm's length. Henry and Aaron followed, squatting on either side of the barrel and taking small sideways steps. They turned to fit out the door, then disappeared. Emma and Thatcher were last. They squeezed through the galley door and immediately ran into Henry's back. As Emma filled her lungs to shout at him, she caught the scent that had stopped him. It was a smell of sweet rot. "Oh, no." "Go, go," said Owen, swinging around to cover their backs. The other 4 shuffled down the passageway as fast as their heavy loads and straining limbs would allow. Emma's eyes burned, what she refused to blink. She swung her head around as the light from the above faded in and out. But it was her ears that warned her first. It made her think of an anchor dragging across the rocky sea bottom, a wet raking sound. The little supply line stopped cold. "Owen," she called, "up here." She heard his quick footsteps slapping past her across the wet floorboards, and then she heard something else. Slick, slick, slick. That horrible breathy rasp again. She glanced down at her carving knife, its handle pinned under her chin, its sharp metal blade just beyond. She could drop the barrel and wield the knife. Then she looked up again, and there was illuminated by the checkerboard light from the grating was a very face of horror. She dropped the barrel in the split second before Thatcher did, causing it to tip her way. Thatcher's gaffed hook skidded across the lid, nicked her cheek, and fell to the wet floor. The sound of its metal clatter was entirely drowned out, however, by that of her scream. The face of horror, it turned out, was a familiar one. It stared down at her, now glazed with clear slime and bloodshot eyes, unblinking. All right, that was chapter 16, and tomorrow we will read chapter 17 and find out what or who they have discovered below deck. Have a good afternoon, guys.